Awesome. Okay. Like I was saying, we've got Dan Mori here today with us, which I'm really excited about. So it was interesting, guys. I did a prep call with Dan yesterday morning for about, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. And I think in that period of time, Dan dropped more knowledge on me and inspiration than I actually thought I was getting into. But I was happy about that. So thank you. And at the end, I said to Dan, I said, hey, Dan, how should I introduce you to my membership group? Like, what's your bio? And being the humble guy that Dan is, he was like, look, I don't really care about bios, Russ. He's like, but if you want to know, I started a recruiting company. He's done over 300 million in revenue, which is spectacular. And your recruiting company is called Employment Solutions. Is that right, Dan?
That's right.
Okay. And, but most importantly, from what Dan was telling me, is that he wakes up in the morning just inspired to help other people and to help recruiters, just like all of us here. And so Dan is the editor of Staffing Monthly and also the owner of Staffing Mastery. So Dan's also a recruiting coach and does a lot of retreats with leaders within recruiting. And he's pretty much part of every recruiting association out there that I'm aware of. And I don't know, I'm just really excited to have Dan here today. So Dan, thanks for being here. And good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate that. I truly do. I always get antsy around introductions. I don't really like hearing about myself, but I do love sharing. I've done so much in this industry, and this industry has given me so much, and I've failed so many times and I've learned so many lessons that it's just humbling to be able to share that with other people that are on the journey that can help them out. So that's really why I'm here. I am all things staffing, and to kind of put an exclamation point on my desire to help others and share. One of my favorite quotes from one of my clients, she always says, no matter how bad business gets or no matter what we face, for some reason, it seems like Dan has been through it and has the answer, and yet never lets anybody really know about the struggles that he's gone through. It seems like everything is always blue sky and rainbows, which it's not. I think I just have the right mindset about how to tackle the challenges. So I'm grateful to be here. I really am. So Russ, I feel like we should have recorded yesterday's call because we were just vibing so well, but where do you want to start?
It's funny. It's funny you say that afterwards. I was like, man, we should have recorded that, but no worries. So, we, on our prep call yesterday, guys, we were like, what topic should we talk about? What value can we bring everyone here? And I just thought of this. Now, if anybody here has anything they want to add or ask questions, please do so. I want this to be a very informal environment. Pretend we're all at dinner right now and we're all friends talking about our business. That's the kind of environment I want to create here. I'm just letting people in here in the room while they come in. Okay. So what I thought of, guys, was, all right, Dan, talk about like when you started your recruiting business, how you got clients, what struggles and hurdles you faced. I think that would be of most value to all of us because a lot of us here are in that position right now. We're starting fresh. So we could start there.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love going down memory lane, especially this time of year when nostalgia is so prevalent. But so yeah, when I started out, I got to tell you all, I didn't even know what the recruiting industry was. Like I had no clue, right? So super quick backstory. Like I grew up pretty poor. I don't come from an affluent background by any means. I dropped out of community college. I was in the military. I got off active duty and I landed in a job selling cars, right? And I've been the butt of a lot of jokes. I got to tell you, I really enjoyed it. I like cars. I like working with people. I like helping people make smart financial decisions. So I really enjoyed it, but I hated the environment. I hated the hours. Like you work at nights and weekends and holidays, and they have you come in on your day off and like, they just grind you. And I hated that. And when I was starting to look around at I realized that all of them were divorced, were terrible fathers, had drug and alcohol addiction issues, and they just were not leading healthy, prosperous lives. And I just was like, I want something different in my life. I want to be able to control my own destiny. I want to be able to make my own schedule and all those things that we strive for as business owners. So I had an opportunity present itself with a friend of mine who was just in the fledgling stage of starting a business. He actually approached me a year prior and asked me to be a commission-only salesperson selling his staffing services. And I had no clue what it was. And we went out one day, literally, I took a day off of work, went out, did some prospecting walk-ins, got a client. And I'm going to tell you kind of how we did that. And it came back and was like, well, what do we do? Let's fill this order. And he's like, well, we don't have any applicants yet either. And I was like, okay, so I start calling through my contacts, right? And like, I get someone lined up to take this job, and like, they go meet. And then the guy we lined up was like, I'm not going to work there. Those people are crazy, right? I'm like, right. This all happened in one day. So I was like, well, hey, I was like, what happens? How much money would I make if I would have, we would have made that placement? And the guy told me what my cut of the fee would have been. And I was just like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm going to go hang out selling cars. I was making pretty good money. And about a year later, we got back together, and I realized that I hated selling cars. And he wasn't that much further along in business. He had a little bit of attraction, but I still didn't know anything about staffing. And I didn't have guys like Russ. There just wasn't a lot of guys like Russ out there that were at that time willing to just give of themselves and teach and mentor and share best practices. So I didn't have any of that. So literally the first thing that I did, not knowing any better, is I called 25 companies in my area. And I just called them on. This is back in the day when it was pretty easy to get people on the phone. It's a little harder now. I called them up and was like, hey, can I ask you a 1-question survey? And they're like, sure, go ahead. And I was like, well, no, I got to do it in person. Can I come to your office? There's only one question I want to ask you. It won't take longer than 2 minutes. Would you be open to that? And they're like, well, just ask me on the phone. I was like, no, it's got to be in person. It's that important. And they're like, okay. And I think morbid curiosity and the fact that I wouldn't just ask them the one question on the phone actually got me the meeting. And so I met with 25 companies. And the only question that I asked them is, what do you want from your recruiting partner? Like, what do you need from a recruiting partner? And they were like, gave me all these different answers, right? I asked 25 companies, and we went back and I took all the answers, and there was 25 different answers. They all wanted to be something a little bit different. And I didn't know how to interpret that. I really wasn't sure what to do. And so I'm like, you know what? I realized there was a common denominator in all of it. They didn't really need more people. They didn't need the person that I could recruit for them. They needed what that person was going to do for them. So if I was working with a manufacturing company and they needed someone to work on a line to produce widgets, they needed the production of those widgets and whatever that would do for their company. If they needed an accountant or a marketing director, they didn't really need the person. They needed the product of that person, the output of that person for the company. And once I started to realize that, I'm like, oh, now I understand the problem that we're really solving. And I think that was probably the biggest transformation mind shift that I had, was that I realized I'm not selling a staffing or recruiting service. I'm solving a business challenge. And for me to best sell my service and partner with them, I have to identify what that business challenge is that my prospect is facing, understand the negative business impact that they're facing, and then clearly understand what is the desired outcome. And once I understand those things, then I can insert my solution and tell them why me and the people that I can find for them is going to get them that desired outcome, and then validate it through questioning. So that was the biggest mindset early on. I'm sure Russ is champing at the bit for a question here, so I'm going to shut up. But
I am. I just, because that's such a great point, because I'm guilty of it. Like, I just think that someone needs somebody, a company needs somebody. I'm going to attach a resume or an MPC and get it over to 100 companies. I'm going to get a rec that way, which, believe it or not, I do get recs that way. And that's what we do here as a group. But what you're saying is, think of it as more consultative, like understand that the companies within our niches all have problems.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, focus on what their problem is and care about that and understand what that is and how you can solve that problem, not just with the person, but what that person's productivity and outcome will be. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah,
absolutely. So think about that. So let's relate it to your process that you've had, all of the success that you've had with, when you send out that person to 100 different hiring managers and you get a rec. Why do you think they give you the rec? What do you think gets their attention and they say, yeah, Russ, I'm in. What do I need to do? Why do you get the rec?
There could be a lot of different reasons. I would say because they have a problem and the timing was good. And, my message to them resonates with them to fix their problem.
So that's right. So you exactly, they see this and they're like, oh my God, this is timely. This is somebody that solves a business challenge that we're currently facing, right? As my sales training teaches, pain in the present, right? So that resonated with them, and they were willing to take action to explore it a little bit further. And then it's what you do next to say, hey, if you really want to drive it home and win that opportunity, one of the questions that you should ask, and I'm sure you do this, is, hey, why did you reach back out to me? What about this candidate or this, email inspired you to respond to me? Oh, well, we need a person like that. Why do you need a person like that to do this or this? Interesting. Is that not happening in your company right now to the level that you would like it? Well, no, not really. Okay. Is that causing issues for the company? Yeah, a little bit. Oh, well, a little bit, or is it a problem worth solving? Well, it's a problem worth solving. Really? So what? So it sounds like it's a little bit more of an issue than maybe you let on. Is that right? Well, yeah. Well, what's really going on? Like, I work with my companies at a level to where I understand what's really going on and the type of person you need to help solve that problem, so we can get the best fit candidate. So what's the biggest challenge you're facing, and what's that negative business impact, and why is it worth solving? And once people hear you talk that way, sidebar here, your competitors don't talk like that, right? They're going to say, oh, I can get you the amazing candidates. I've got the best recruiting techniques. I'm whatever. But once you actually take the interest in them and knowing what makes their business tick and the challenges they're facing, you'll become much better recruiters, because you'll know how to better solve that problem with a better candidate. And then you can also align it with your presentation of the candidate. Hey, you're going to go work for this company. The reason they're looking to fill this position is because they have a vacancy. They have an opportunity to capture something large, or they have this challenge that they need to be solved. And I feel like your skill set is really important to helping them overcome that. So it validates the existence of the candidate for that opportunity as well, which is what candidates want. So that having that depth of understanding is going to be huge. And that's why you get the recs when you send out your skill markets like that.
You know what? Something you said was really interesting there. So like, just the question back to your client, hey, why did you respond to me? Right? Opened up a lot of different pain points and dialogue and solutions that you could navigate through. I met someone on LinkedIn about 2 months ago, really dynamic woman who's a recruiter. And her strategy is, when she connects with someone on LinkedIn, like when she sends a connection request out to a candidate or a prospect, a client, and that person connects with them as a first degree, she'll write back, hey, what was it about my profile that you connected with me? Why did you accept my connection request? And when she told me that, I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of vain. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. And she's like, I'm telling you, it works, because they start saying back to me, well, I noticed in your headline that you specialize in, I'll use Scrum as a skill set. We have some Scrum masters here. And, we're actually looking to scale right now and hire those people. So that's why I wanted to connect with you. So
there's a psychological aspect to that question too. If someone answers that question, what drew you to accept my connection request? So people that accept the connection request, they do it strategically or they do it superfluously. Some people will just accept anything because they want to just have a big network, right? Some people will do it because they truly find it interesting, right? Either way, if you ask those people, one person will give you a legitimate answer and they'll say, hey, this is why, because I see that you're in Scrum and like we want to scale, right? Like, even the superfluous people will have to come up with an answer, right? And they'll start to look at your profile and look for synergies. What's going on psychologically is they're identifying collaboration points. They're building the argument about why it makes sense to be connected to you, which is a foundation for doing business with you, right? So that's why there's a psychological component to that strategy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really good stuff. I've got so many questions here for you, but if you want to continue talking about like your journey in the beginning and what the challenges were that you faced, continue. If not, I can ask you a few questions.
Yeah. So the story I shared yesterday, I want to share because it's one of my favorite ones to tell, because I think it's a true testament to how gritty you need to be to start this business. And I'll tell you, when I started this, I didn't have a ton of money saved up. This was sort of kind of growing my plan B to help become my financial freedom. So like the first couple of months, I didn't even take a paycheck. And my first goal was to start earning enough money where I could pay myself $400 a week, right? So these very modest goals to grow. And our company was very financially prudent, right? So mind you, we started hiring other people. We were paying employees. We got to a point where we got some orders and had some recruiters. We're starting to scale, but we were paying our people before we were paying ourselves, right? And we've always kind of followed that mindset, leaders eat last, right? Kind of concept, right? So at one point, we had this 600 square foot office, which is not very big. And we had 6 employees, but we only had 5 office chairs, right? That was it, just 5 chairs. So I kid you not, we had this thing on the wall where you basically would schedule when you had to stand for 2 hours, right? Like, and we just took turns sharing the chairs and the desks. And it was just like, it's kind of nuts. It's embarrassing to think about now, but we literally had a chair jar that we would save money up every single week from our margin to go in the chair fund. And like, we knew that we were going to save up $100 and we were going to go buy the only chair at Staples that you can get for $100, which doesn't exist anymore. But, you know, it's that dusty one in the corner that really doesn't have any articulation or movement. It barely swivels, right? And it was some Friday that we finally had $100, and my partner and I, we jumped in my truck and we drove over to Staples, and we were so excited. We're testing out every single chair in the store, from, you know, the $300 chair to the $600 chair, all the swivel, the tilt, the function, the articulation, everything, knowing we could only afford the one dusty one in the corner. And my phone rings. And it's the girl in the office, and she's super excited, hyperventilating, can barely get a thought out. And she's like, you got to come back. She's like, that guy you met with earlier this week, he put a really big order in, right? And I was like, oh, well, what does he need? He's like, he needs 6 machinists, right? Because we do staffing and recruiting. And I was like, okay, great. When's he want him to start? And she's like, I don't know, I didn't ask. Well, okay, well, what are we paying him? She's like, I don't know, I didn't ask. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I was just so excited. We got this huge order for 6 machinists that I wanted to get off the phone and tell you guys right away. And we're like, that's not much to go on. And if you've ever tried to call an HR person at 4:30 on a Friday, you know that it was impossible to get a hold of them. So we're like, what do? Maybe we got this big order. We're not really sure. We don't know what to tell people. So we threw a pizza party. We didn't buy the chair. We literally left without getting the chair. We threw a pizza party, and we literally just started making calls. And Monday morning at 7 in the morning, my cell phone rings, and it's Tim from this company. And he goes, hey, why do I have 6 people in my lobby from your company? And I was like, did you call my office on Friday? He goes, I did. I go, did you order 6 people? He goes, I did. I go, do you need 6 people? He goes, I do. And I'm like, this guy's not giving me anything, right? We've all had customers or prospects like that. They just won't tell you the whole story in one sentence. Unlike me, I tell you more. And I was like, is there a problem? Like, I don't know what to do here with this. And he goes, no, this is amazing. He goes, I called you at 4 o'clock on Friday. How do you have 6 people that fit the description here in my office at 7 o'clock on Monday morning? And I was like, isn't that what we're supposed to do? He was one of my 25. I go, when we met the first time, you said that what you wanted from a recruiting partner was someone that would fill your needs as quick as possible with good candidates. And he goes, yeah, that's what I told you. I go, that's what we did. Right. He goes, did you just have them hanging out in your office? He's like, usually when I call a Deco or Manpower or all these companies, it takes 2 weeks to get some resumes for people. And he's like, and I'm like, well, you put the order and we got to work. And that was another defining moment for us, is that we just realized that if you show up for your clients and you realize that, you know, they have needs, they have challenges that they're facing that they're trying to solve, and they don't want to wait 2 weeks. They want to be communicated with, they want to be worked for, right? They want you to earn their business every single day, not in a subservient way. I don't practice those types of business relationships, but they want to know that you're a true partner, that you're holding up your end of the bargain. And we demonstrated that. And that was another turning point core value for us. We're like, this is who we need to be. We need to show that we're willing to earn our keep every single day. And fast forward, we ended up, actually, that was a big turning point, big break client for us. We were able to afford the chair, move offices, scale the team. And it was really an inflection point for everything that we grew our company into. And we live by those values today. We show up for our clients, we work hard, and we don't stop until the work is done. So, but that's it. I could go on and on about origin stories, but I want to share, that's the grit. Like, sometimes you have to stand up. Sometimes there's not a chair for you to sit down. Sometimes you don't have the money for the things that you need. Sometimes, you know, you don't know when that opportunity is going to come. And when it does, you have to, and I treat opportunities today the same as I did back then. You know, it's like, you have to be gritty to do it. That's how you're going to grow in this business. And it wasn't that long after that I was able to truly start paying ourselves a living wage and make this my career. And it's been incredibly rewarding. And it's what it's done for me is why I want to give back to other people, because I'm so grateful for what it's done. But so fire away with your questions. I'll take anything. I'll just do Q&A at this point, so I don't take up all the time on origin story.
No, thanks, Dan. That's amazing. It's so timely that you share that story. I think of, hold on one second. I'll get to you, Derek. Yep. So we have a new member here, Parker, who's sitting in his car right now. And I was going to introduce Parker later to the group, but I think about this because Parker shared a story with me 2 days ago that was touching, and Parker, I hope it's okay that I share this story, if that's okay. Okay, cool. But, Parker, I think during the summertime had enough of corporate America, and he wanted to take his own destiny in his own hands and start his own recruiting business, and had minimal recruiting background, but was going to do whatever he could to make it happen. And he's got a newborn, he's married. And so, he had bills to pay and his back was against the wall. And we were staying in touch the past couple of months. He didn't have money to really come into recruiting, which I completely respected. But I wanted to make sure, he was doing well and get updates from him. Anyways, since then, Parker has landed a pipe searches of $72,000. Yeah, since October, right, Parker? And what he did was he just found ways to get it done. Like he went on to HubSpot, and there was a free way to send cold emails out. So every Sunday, he would load up 100 people that he would scrape himself manually and get a very targeted email out to them with, by finding out that these companies needed people, because he would find that out on Indeed. And then he would just look at it every day. And if some people got back to him, he'd respond back to him, but he did whatever he could to make a placement. And he told me 2 days ago that he's never seen this much money in his bank account before. And I just thought it was a great story because it was such grassroots that he did, and perseverance,
Buddy, Parker, congratulations, man. I love that. That is huge. And from one dad to another dad, and here's my evidence over here. My kids come in and they draw me pictures on my whiteboard. I love it, man. You were building a legacy, brother, and keep going. And I remember those stories of seeing the bank account hit levels where I'm like, holy cow, I can't even imagine that. Like I make in a commission check what some people in America make in a year, like it's an amazing, humbling feeling. And the reality is there was a time, well, I would be lying if I said, I was gonna say there was a time I didn't believe it. There was a time that I wouldn't believe this level was possible, but there's another story about my origin where that really fired me up. Very early days, we were doing like $5,000 a week in billing. And I was like, hey, we got to get some more money in the bank. We got to support payroll. We got to operations. We're going to scale. And one of my partners, who is the eternal pessimist, was like, he's like, we'll never need to support $20,000 a week in revenue. And I was just like, what? I was like, and I honestly felt angry at that time. I had to excuse myself from the meeting so I wouldn't do something that I would regret. And then my two partners, he and my other partner, went out to dinner, and they kept the meeting going. And after that meeting, my third partner called, and he's like, hey, you're not going to believe what this guy said. He said, I told him that you were fired up. You were probably going to start selling right now, and then he better get ready for $80,000 a week. And he said it would never happen and ever happen. And he's like, if we ever got to $80,000 a week in revenue, that he would buy the company a cruise. And I'm just like, that. He said, what? That MFer said, what? Like, I'm like fired up. Monday morning, I had pictures of tropical islands all over the walls. There was like the thermometer that measures the growth of stuff. And like, we were at like, I have $10,000 a week in sales. And I'm like, let's go. And everyone's in the office and we're grinding towards this thing. And we're looking at palm trees and sandy beaches. And I tell you what, we got there. We got there because we put in the work. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Most people are lazy. Most people are not willing to do what others are not in order to have what others don't. They're not willing to do it, right? And there is this finest little line. It is the thinnest glass ceiling that you can ever imagine that keeps people from greatness. And they get there and they're like, oh, this is so hard. This is so hard. It's so difficult. It is not hard. It is not hard to scrape off 100 emails. It is not hard to custom tailor 100 emails out to clients. That's not hard. It's not hard. There's much harder work out there. I have done way more work for less money. So I applaud you, my friend. That is a huge story, and I'm gonna champion you on that one, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing those stories. Dan, do you have a hard stop at 11:30?
I don't, man.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay, because I want to open it up here, and I mean, if who has some questions here? I saw something in the chat box.
Derek's got a question. Where is Derek on my screen? I don't see Derek on my screen anywhere.
Yeah,
Does Derek got video on?
Yeah, Derek, can you show yourself? I see you there, but Dan, do you see his question?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
so I'm just gonna read it out loud quick to make sure I got it. How intimate can you get with a business as a stranger, asking for their pain points and talking through their challenges? How do you get a company to open up to their issues, whether it is design, ordering things, buying things, and then connecting that with people as a solution that solves those pain points? Just curious around the idea of sensitive information company may not want to speak on. How do you lead those conversations to pull real meat out of it? All right, so Derek, there's my guy. He's in his car. He's got his suitcase. He's headed somewhere warmer. I don't know where that is, but Derek, tell me about where are you at on your journey, man? Where you're starting recruiting. What's going on? Where are you at with your journey?
I'm just starting out, just getting everything stood up, getting the business stood up, and going with a couple campaign strategies with Russ for gathering clients and candidates. And I was just curious about, that story, because I've always looked at the people as a solution, especially, reading some leadership books and stuff like that. Always look at people, not the process, but the people as a solution to problems. And, I was just curious what out of, when you talk to companies, and I really want to go in depth with what they do, because I'm very familiar with the sector I'm in and with engineering for automation and manufacturing. I really want to know, from my engineering background, what are their issues? And I'd love to solve that with a people solution and get them to that level they need to be. But I know it takes those gold nugget details that you have to extract from them. And I wanted to know, what's the best formula for that?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Do you feel like that's the biggest sticking point in your business right now that's holding you back?
No, sir. No, it's just something out of curiosity from your story.
Sure. All right, so I'm happy to share that. So what do you feel like is the biggest sticking point that's holding you back? Like, what do you think is standing between you and where you want your business to scale to?
Honestly, nothing other than making sure that I have a good business, a proper business, a proper solution for the customer, and convincing them that, or not convincing them, finding clients that are willing to pay for either staffing solution or a direct hire, paying that fee, having someone wanting to pay that fee. That's kind of the only obstacle I've really thought of lately. But other than that, I think it's like you guys said, it's just upon you and putting in work and getting it done.
Yeah, and Dan, just to kind of build a framework, Derek is really brand new. He's just starting his recruiting company now, so he hasn't had much exposure with prospecting or getting clients yet. So, but
sure. All right, so if finding those clients that are willing to pay you the fees is your biggest challenge, if that doesn't happen for you, what happens to your business?
I would find a way. No matter what, I would attempt to. I don't.
What if you don't? What if you literally can't find the clients that will actually pay your fees?
Come up with a different structure, I guess.
Okay.
Or
What kind of negative business impact would you have to experience to just shift your structure? Because you're going down one path. What would have to happen to make you pivot to go to a different path?
If I had I exhausted everything and what I thought I was supposed to or what I planned and nothing was working, I would have to adapt and shift to where it was working. I'd have to bunker down where I thought I could get better results at.
Okay. And I know early on that's fairly easy to do. The earlier you are in your business, the easier it is to pivot. The more established you get, it gets a little bit trickier. But let me ask this: if you were faced with these two options, pivoting and finding a different strategy to go get clients, or pay me $10,000 to give you every client you want, which one would you do?
I would probably pay $10,000.
All right. So thank you for playing along with that. I don't know you. You're a complete stranger to me. I don't know anything about your business. I don't even know the sector that you're in. That's exactly how I ask those questions. That's how I ask those intimate questions of people. I really want to understand, what are they facing? What are their challenges? I know you're in a safe setting here with this call with Russ and your cohort here, but did you feel any issues sharing that information with me being a complete stranger?
Yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah.
But you did it.
Yeah. So I wanted to answer the question.
And so were your prospects. And the thing is here is it was a little bit staged here because I didn't prospect you. I didn't come in knowing that you had any sort of issue, and I'm truly not trying to sell you anything. But if you're talking to a prospect that has a real business challenge with an established business that you're recruiting for with your, engineers or skilled, positions, they're going to share it with you. So I want you to feel comfortable asking the question. And truly, if you feel uncomfortable asking that question of getting to those pain points, then I hate to say it like this, but it's in your own head, and the biggest thing that holds most people back from crashing to a higher level of success is not wanting to interrupt people, not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to, interrupt their day, or be too invasive. But let me ask you a question, man. We don't know each other, but if you saw me, and I don't know what kind of person you are, and I want you to answer this honestly, but if you saw me broken down on the side of the road, and no cell phone, trying to change a tire, looking like a dude selling tire changing stuff on an infomercial that just can't figure out how to get out of his own way, are you the kind of guy that would actually stop and offer assistance?
Yeah, absolutely.
And why would you do that, man?
Because I want someone to do it for me.
That's right.
And I'm there.
But also
I'm there
because you probably would recognize in that moment that I could use some help, and you're a helpful person, right? All you're doing when you're talking to your prospects is you're looking for people that might need your help. That's it. In fact, you're really not even selling anything. You're really not. You're looking for opportunities to help companies and people get better. And if they say, yeah, Derek, I could use your help here. We're really struggling. We need an automation engineer. We need someone to put our circuit boards together, whatever it might be, right? We could use that. We're having a hard time finding that out. Really? Out of curiosity, what have you tried? Why do you think it's so hard to find people to fill this role for you? Right? And Derek, I'm telling you something right now. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be good for all of you. Be inquisitive. Don't use these questioning strategies like a weapon to try to sell your service. Use it as an opportunity to learn how to better serve your customers. Right? If you truly ask that question, like, hey, why has this been such a hard position to fill? Like, oh, well, we post it here, we post here, we interview, we can't find anyone with these skill sets. Interesting. What all have you tried? Like, learn what they're doing, right? After a while, you're going to learn what they're doing and why it doesn't work. And then later on, you'll be able to take that information seamlessly and use it to position your solution as to why it's different. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on, I didn't do that. I suffered from this thing called premature presentation, right? And I went, it's like, oh, I can solve all your problems. I got people, they can show up here. And it's like, well, and then they asked me, what do you do? Like, oh, well, I posted on job boards. I use LinkedIn. And they're thinking, well, I posted it on job boards and I used LinkedIn and it didn't work for me. And if they did something that didn't work for them, do they think it's going to work for me? They're not. So sometimes you just need to ask those questions, like, what have you actually done? Like, why do you think this is so hard to fill this position? And they're going to start to uncover those pain points. They're going to start to say, oh, that's got to be frustrating. I can't imagine what that's like. Like, who's having to pick up the slack on this role? It's like, are you spreading the work over other people and crushing morale? Or is just the work not getting done and the business is suffering, right? Like, that's a pretty straightforward question, but it's honest, and they're probably going to be like, oh, well, we're, the rest of the team's picking up the slack. How does that make them feel? Does the company out overtime pay? And once you start realizing something that, like, if they've got to pay 5 other people overtime to fill this position and crush their morale and put additional turnover of their labor as staff and just keep reinventing the cycle of turnover and having a hard time finding people, I assure you your fee will become the lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you guys were doing that little exercise. I think Derek had mentioned that he was a little worried that people aren't going to want to pay a fee for him to find people. That was his concern, if I'm not mistaken. And then as you started probing and asking questions, Dan, you said, would you pivot if your back was against the wall, or would you pay $10,000 to get as many recs as you want? And, Derek said, I'd pay the $10,000 and I would too. So it kind of answers your question. People will pay money to solve their problems, so like,
they will.
That's what I took from it, in the beginning there.
If it's a problem worth solving, they will.
Yeah.
And if it's not a problem worth solving, don't chase the business, man. Just don't do that to yourself. Buddy, I have worked on recs for cheapskate companies that will just kick tires on good candidates, and it is just not worth the aggravation. find the companies. And if someone's like, oh, and you're like, oh, I can get you this engineer and they're $120,000 position and it's going to cost you, 20 grand fee for me to find this person to you, right? It's okay to ask, is it worth it to your company to fill this position with a qualified candidate that will help you achieve your organizational goals? Is $20,000 investment worth it? No, that's too much. Okay. I've identified that this does not seem to be a big enough problem worth solving, and it's probably best for us not to work together. If you find yourself in a situation where making a $20,000 investment into the right employee that's going to help you achieve your organizational and business unit goals, makes sense, please reach out to me. I would love to work with you. And it's okay to say that, man. And truly, it's hard when you're early on in business. It's tough. You'll be like, oh, well, would you do it for 10? Oh, 5, because I'd really like to make 5 grand. I'll do it for $1,000. I'd love to make $1,000 right now just to feel victory. Yeah. And you'll start to give your service away. And you know what, man? Here's the deal. People associate your value and your quality with the price you pay, whether you know it or not. And I can prove it. If I said, hey, who wants to pay $200,000 for a Toyota Corolla? Most people say no, because it's a Toyota Corolla. But if I say, who wants to pay $10,000 for a Ferrari? Most people be like, that's a Ferrari, but wait, what's wrong with it? Why are you selling it for $10,000? Something's got to be wrong. Even though it's a Ferrari, and we know it's a Ferrari, right? So people associate the value of what they're getting with the price it pays. So know your worth and be okay standing on it and be okay walking away from business if people don't know your worth. There is more business out there, and if you focus your energy on going and getting that business, you will find it.
That is a great transition, Dan, because I was actually have a note here to talk about your edition in Staffing Monthly. I think it was 2 months ago, where you interviewed Tom Erb, who we both know. And I remember I watched that whole video, and I remember you talked about, Tom, are there like C-rated recs, B-rated recs, A-rated recs? Like, what's good business? What's business we should be turning down? And it's a good theme here, because when we're starting out fresh, we think we sometimes can work in desperation or fear, which is probably the worst place to work in, right? And it's okay to turn down business. And so it was a timely thing. You just brought that up. I was going to ask that question, actually.
Yeah, there was a guy, man, I can't remember his last name, Mike from VIP Staffing. I saw him talk at a conference, and I learned this lesson from him. But he was like, I'm the most expensive, staffing recruiting partner in town, because I do it intentionally. He goes, because I know that they will always go to the less expensive solution. So I know that by the time they get to me, they're going to have tried everybody else. So they have to pay my price if they want the problem solved. Yeah. And he goes, it just makes more sense. And I'm like, it really does. And it's tough, because when you're starting out, you want to win. You want to make a little bit of money, because you want this plan B or this business to become your mainstay. And we do get desperate. And, you really do have to balance that with how much time you have to recruit, especially early on, because there's only so much of you to go around, right? So it's okay to turn down bad business, and it's okay to educate your clients. Experts get paid. If you present yourself like an expert and you have a fee structure like an expert, and you stand on the value of expert fee structures, people will pay you because you're an expert, especially if you know your field. If you truly know the ins and outs of engineering and that level, and you understand what businesses, face, and you're like, oh, I get it. Like, I've seen businesses face this problem. Is this a challenge for you? What about legal compliance? Like, if your engineers aren't doing this, like, is this an issue? And like, they're, wow, this guy really knows his stuff,
Yep.
And one last thing I'll say on this, and I'll open up for other questions, but one of my favorite things when people say, man, that fee is really high. Actually, there's 2 things. One, I'll be like, yeah, I get it. Out of curiosity though, like, my clients pay me this on the regular to fill these orders for them. Why do you think they pay me these types of fees to find qualified people? And they'll say, because you find really good people, or because you're worth it, or they'll say something, and whatever they say is right. But usually they say, because you send really good people. That's usually the most common answer, and be like, you're right. Because the way we operate, we have to charge what we charge, because we understand the value of the candidates that we're placing. And the nice thing about our business is the companies that do it for less, that are in the cheaper or the value tier that charge less, they actually have to go out and get lower quality candidates, right? And that's an okay business model. We're not knocking our competitors. They serve a certain sector of the market. we work with companies that value their employees and are willing to invest in getting the best people because they recognize their people are the best competitive advantage that they have. And that's who we work with. And if that's not you, it's okay. You know, and people be like, oh, well, I want to pay that. And then the other one is like, well, I can get it cheaper with another recruiter. Yeah, I'm sure you can get it cheaper, you know, but you get what you pay for. And that's it. And that's just, it's okay to say, I'm sure you can get it cheaper somewhere else, you know, or sometimes the words matter. This is a big one right here. This is something that served me really well being a linguist, is that people say, oh, well, you know, this competitor charges 10%. You know, this, and they use the percentage, the fee structure, right, to be less than yours. You have to insert the word cheaper because you have to get them associating a lower fee structure with being cheap. And you have to say, it doesn't shock me that someone else out there is willing to do it cheaper for you, because there's a lot of less qualified talent that's willing to be onboarded quickly, that doesn't need to be recruited as intensely because they job hop. They're readily available to take an opportunity. So it doesn't shock me that you could get it cheaper, you know, but do you want cheap or do you want good? Because if you want cheap, I'll tell you, that's not me. If you want good, that's me. And that's a business decision that I can't make for you. And then you shut up and you let them think about it. If they say, well, no, I want it cheap, don't work with them. Don't do it.
This is gold right here. I love this kind of stuff because this is the stuff that we're all going to face in our recruiting weeks with, you know, every week, work week, when we have an opportunity. These are the objections that are going to come up. So this is, yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
I love it, Abby.
Yeah. In my field, software development, the right engineer hired makes the company way more than the 20. Yeah, exactly. It's a great point, Abby. Yep.
And that's the other thing that you need to sell on when you're actually, you know, selling your fees. This is a very commoditized industry, you know, staffing, recruiting, it's very commoditized for some reason. It's really one of the only industries that's like that the price is tied to the pay of the person, of the inventory, right? Like you don't go in anywhere and know the markup of whatever you're buying, right? Like no one really knows how much a car costs to make or what someone that's selling you a house paid for it. Like there's just markets of scale that you pay, right, when you buy anything. But in our industry, it's always a percentage of someone's payroll. So the less expensive person is a less fee. So you can't find yourself competing against your competitors and their pricing structures. You have to actually position your solution against the problem you're solving. So to Abby's point, a good software engineer is worth a whole heck of a lot more than $20,000, $40,000 a year, you know? So that's a smart approach, Abby. And that's the way you should be looking at it. And that's why you need to understand the negative business impact, and why that way you can ask the question like, hey, this is a $20,000 fee. Is that a wise investment for your company to invest $20,000 with me to find the right person to help you solve this challenge to achieve your organizational goals? Is it a good investment, right? And they say no, walk away. If they say yeah, great. Let's do this. Let's work together.
It's awesome.
So,
hey guys, I know Dan has been gracious to spend more time than we originally spoke of, but is there any questions anybody has? Let's fire them out here before the top of the hour while we have Dan here. I mean, you can come forward and just talk on here too versus typing. Oh, okay, here we go. We got a couple coming in. So Robin, how do you respond to candidates concerned about the pending recession? Good question.
all right. So Robin, got you here right on my screen. So talk to me. So what concerns are you hearing from candidates about the pending recession?
Primarily that they are concerned about leaving their current job because if they go somewhere else and there's a recession, they may get fired right away. You know, that old last hired, first fired rule. So
yeah,
they're concerned about that. Yeah, so that's it.
Sure. So it's a valid concern, you know, and it's on a lot of people's mind. You know, it's half the economy is showing signals of no recession coming whatsoever, and the other half is flashing signals of recession. No one knows what to do. So if a candidate was going to come to me and they're going to ask that question, be like, hey, I really like this opportunity. You know, Robin, everything you're sharing with me is really good, but I'm nervous because if I get hired here, you know, what assurances do I have that this is the right move, that I'm not going to get laid off in 6 months or a year, right? So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to affirm their concerns, right? People need to be heard and say, you're right, that is a valid concern. And if you truly are that nervous about it, I would encourage you not to step out in faith and pursue this opportunity, right? And let them know that that's an option. That will take a lot of the stress and reluctance off their mind and their plate because they've been heard and they realize that, yeah, I don't have to move forward, right? But then ask them, how secure in your current position are you? If you were to look at these two positions side by side, which one is better for your career and the most recession resistance? Because I assure you that when companies do the last one in, first one out, layoffs type things, those are usually production level people or people that aren't adding significant value to the organization. Most organizations will look to retain the best talent they have that are going to be the strongest lean team they have to continue to grow through turbulent times. And the position that I'm looking to fill, and hopefully it's you, would be one of those critical roles. So I don't think it's as big of a risk, but it's not my place to say. So I kind of share that knowledge, and then I ask them, like, which position is better for your career long-term and the most recession resistant, you know? And that's how I would address that piece of it. And I would kind of sell the position. Then you can ask your client, it's okay to say, be like, hey, you know, in the face of a recession, if things go south, like, how likely is this role to be, you know, eliminated? It's okay to ask that question, you know, and they're gonna, and if they give you assurances, you know, then you can pass those on to your candidates. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Thanks.
All right, we got Parker's here. So yeah, ask them how much money someone in the possession or would make the company, will make them $1 million a year. It's not costing them 20K. That's right. Yeah. Nailed it. Okay, yep. Derek, that was good feedback. There we go. Yeah. What are questions you got? Yeah, that's right. Staying in a job is a risk as well. And that's why I say position those opportunities to each other, because sometimes people think just because they are somewhere that it's secure and safe. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you might want to say, taking this opportunity might actually be in your best interest because the company that you're currently with is a little less recession proof than where I'm hopefully helping you go, you know, and you let them compare those things and don't let them just fall into the guise of false security because it's familiar.
Yep. If nobody has any questions, I'm going to ask one more and then we'll wrap this up. But if anyone has any questions, bring them in now. Dan, talk to me about automation, like all these automated tools. I know you and I touched on it on my interview with you a few months ago. What is your opinion on, you know, automated tools for your recruiting business versus maybe doing personalized manual work? And what's a good balance there?
Yeah. Thanks, Parker. It's actually, I was thinking about that. I don't keep track of that stuff anymore. It's probably more. Parker, it's probably more. I'm going to do some math on it to figure that out, but I'm like, I don't really care anymore. But yeah, so how do I feel about automation? So first and foremost, when you're starting out, I do not think you should start with automation, right? Because automation only helps a successful process scale, right? That's the first thing. So if you're going to start out anything at all in your recruiting business and you're going to start to figure out who you are in the marketplace and how you best, you know, operate, you're going to have to do the manual things. And you're just going to know that these things are not going to scale. And that's okay. You just have to do the manual work. You have to scrape the resumes. You have to send the emails one-on-one. You have to prospect manually. Like, you have to do all of those things. And the first thing that you're looking for is positive signals. You're looking for responses. You're looking for candidates to engage with you. If you're prospecting, you're looking for prospects to engage with you. If you're sending out those 100, you know, skill marketing emails, you want to see, are people actually responding? Are you getting those positive signals, right? And once you start to see those positive signals from those key areas, and there's going to be areas where you don't really see much of a positive signal, start to minimize those, you know, maximize the ones where you're getting those positive signals and start to scale that a little bit, you know, and you want to see, is it repeatable? If I do more of this manually, is it going to get me the same level or more positive signals, right? And you start to actually do that. This is going to help shape a successful process, which is the foundation to automation, right? Once you realize that you can actually scale and get repeatable, predictable results out of your process, then this is my recommendation for finding points to automate. Literally map out your process. The human process is the underpinning of every successful recruiting and staffing organization, and map out the entire journey, how you're finding candidates, how you're getting them into your system, how you're keeping in touch with them, how you're onboarding them, how you're submitting them to clients, how you're managing the counters, all that kind of stuff, you know, getting in place, billing, like manage that, map that entire thing out, map it out for the client journey as well, how you're doing all of it. And then the really key thing to do is find out where all your quality touch points are, because the best value that you add as a recruiter is going to be when you're physically engaged with a candidate and when you're physically engaged with a prospect or a client. That's the highest value, the highest revenue generation activities that you can have for your company. Circle those. Don't automate anything inside those circles. then look at those other areas and say, hey, what are the tasks that are preventing me from spending more time within that circle? You know, and is it sending out emails? You know, maybe instead of drafting up 100 emails, maybe start to look, you know, using templates in Outlook or Google and just creating templates to send out. Maybe it's getting a HubSpot automation tool for email marketing or MailChimp or whatever it might be, and like automate that piece of it. If it's a medial task, a highly repetitive task that's keeping you from spending time in the quality circles, right? And then automate there. And what I like to do is I like to actually just map out and say, okay, I can automate this. I can automate this. Here's the types of tools. I like to map it out and see it. And then I like to pick one area. I don't want to automate everything at once. I'm gonna say, hey, this is going to give me the biggest return and let me spend the most time with my candidates and clients. So I'm going to pick this right here. And then I'm going to see how effective that automation actually is. And does it get me the same level of results or better than when I was doing it manually? And if it is, I consider that a success. And then I move on to the next part of the process that's outside of those circles that I can automate. And that's how I approach the automation process. And then annually, I do a quick look back and say, hey, is everything working as it should, right? Or is there an opportunity to improve one of my areas? Is there a new tool out there that I can look to implement into the process? And that's how I approach automation.
That's awesome. And what's your opinion on like cold calling nowadays? Are you a fan of cold calling? Does your team do it? What's your opinion there?
So am I a fan of cold calling? So I don't mind cold calling. Actually, I know it's not rejection. You know, I have fun with it. I like to actually like get people on the phone and talk to them. You know, I think that's fun. I don't really look at, I'm not selling anything. I'm just looking for people that might need my help. I love to help people. So I do approach it. I will say that since the pandemic, that big digital shift, the percentages have fallen off a cliff, and it was already a low conversion, low yield, you know, function anyway. It is even less these days. So we do still do a little bit. Most of our prospecting activities are centered around, we do some cold calling, we do email outreach, we do in-person networking, in-person walk-ins for local reps in the markets if we can actually talk to it. But our biggest drivers of actual, you know, meetings, conversations, and things like that are LinkedIn and networking. That's really it. Outside, there is a caveat. I have a technique, and I've talked to Russ about this, like building my own personal referral network. It's a technique that I use for that we don't have time to get into right now, but that's my most prosperous tool. And I would encourage you to build your own personal referral network. And if Russ ever has me back, we can talk about that. But LinkedIn is an easy way to prospect, get to know people, use the same concepts we talked about the woman earlier. Just, hey, why'd you connect with me? I just interviewed, if you've not seen Staffing Monthly, go check out the interview with Nikki Matthews from Go Big. She was the first one that we did as our expose as a day in the life of a great recruiter. She talks about her LinkedIn strategy and she crushes it with LinkedIn. So that's something that I would definitely check out. And then, like I say, networking events, you know, go to HR networking events. And then industry specific, not recruiting industry specific, but if you're in the software industry, like go to those association events, things like that, and network with people and just build relationship. And that's the best methods that I have for prospecting. And I'll still do cold calling until the number gets like lower than 1% conversion, I guess. But demand gen is where it's shifting to. Everything is going ever so more towards marketing, but we're not quite there. We're on the precipice, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, good stuff.
I got a question here from Parker. Which role did you play mainly for your company? Oh, yeah. So I will say I've not ever done much in the back office side. I've not really done payroll. I have collected hours. But that's not really done much on the back office side of payroll and billing and invoicing and collections and that kind of stuff. It's just not my forte. My primary role was sales and business development. That was scaling the company. When I was in an operational role, that was my main focus, was sales, business development, growing, getting opportunities, working with customers. Secondarily, I did work a desk. I've done a fair bit of recruiting and understanding candidates and that kind of piece of it. I did scale to a point where I don't work in operations anymore. It's a board level. So my primary contribution today is strategic planning and strategic growth through acquisition, which, Russ, I just told you this yesterday. It is official. The ink is dry. We actually just acquired another company yesterday. So that's a focus of me today. And that's like my wins today. And I would have never believed that 15 years ago, but
congratulations. That's fantastic. What an accomplishment. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'll let you go here, Dan, real quick. Everyone can we go to Staffing Monthly and just subscribe? I already am, but people, my members here can subscribe to the monthly editions that come out. Is it just staffingmonthly.com or?
Staffingmonthly.com. You guys will get to see this. We're in the last days of that old website, but yeah, we're migrating everything over into the Staffing Mastery umbrella here shortly.
Awesome. I'm going to put that in the chat box here, staffingmonthly.com.
Definitely go check out Nikki Matthews. She just came out in December, the most recent issue, and it's about a day in the life of a great recruiter. And she's executive recruiter, focuses on, high level perm placement stuff. And she really talks about her strategy for connecting with clients. And she's got an interesting approach to LinkedIn that I think is it's overly simple yet brilliant. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing, I took so much value from this call, guys. This is amazing. One thing I'll say, the biggest thing for me was when you started calling 25 companies and asking them to do a survey, a 1-question survey, and you would not tolerate the phone, you had to be there in person, and you met with 25 freaking companies and got in front of them to ask that 1 question. All of us can do that here. All of us can copy what Dan did. And that if you have enough, if your back's against the wall, like we've all been there, then this is what it takes. And there's no reason we can't do that like today and make those calls and tell someone, we're coming to your office, I got to ask you this question, That was amazing.
It's true. And here's the follow-up to that. So after I figured out all those answers and it was like, this 25 people want 25 different things, I called all 25 back and I'm like, hey, are you willing to invite me in? And I can share with you what you and 24 other people said they wanted from it. And they wanted to know the results. So I got a second meeting out of it. And that's what we did. And I was like, this is what we want. And this is how we figured we're going to, meet these needs. And we actually got 23 of them as clients. And even today, we actually still work with probably at least 10 of them. A few of them have gone out of business over the years or whatnot. Thank you, Margaret. So yeah, I followed up and they're like, yeah, we want to know. And it was just, I think curiosity got the best of them. But it's fun. Like, I just like talking to people and like learn. I like talking shop, as you can tell,
Yeah.
And
Dan, give us one book that you'd recommend for us to read that you like.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So normally my go-to, because I'm really big into staffing, hence all of it, I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you 3 with a disclaimer. So this one is like the one I love this. It's called Breaking Through. This is more about scaling a staffing business. This is more staffing centric. It's put together by my guy, Mike Cleland, and Barry Asen over at SIA. Great book about scaling businesses. The disciplines that are explained in here are applicable whether you're building a recruiting business or other. However, one of my go-to books that I probably read, or I should say listen to 2 or 3 times a year just to recenter myself, is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. It's not really anything to do with business or staffing or recruiting. It's more about staying focused on less but better. We have especially as entrepreneurs, we have this innate desire to re-engineer things and overcomplicate things and say yes to everything. And the biggest takeaway from that book that I learned is, when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else without knowing what that no is. And it could be a better opportunity. And you need to be a better protector of your time. So that second book is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And it really is, like I said, it's an easy read. I read it 2 or 3 times a year, and it's got some great techniques on how do you actually say no to people. Techniques that I teach my people to even use against me when I'm asking them to do more work. Things like, hey, I understand that you want me to do this. Which one of my other priorities do you want me to deprioritize to take on this project? It's like, oh yeah, because we forget that. So that's a good one. With a disclaimer, I will tell you this one right now. It was recommended to me almost as a gag. I picked it up on Audible. I read it. It's probably the best self-help professional development book that I've ever listened to, but it is incredibly crass. It is not politically correct in any sense of the word. There's a lot of really weird analogies, but it's the subtle art of not giving up. It really, it was, I don't want to say it's life-changing, but a huge takeaway for me, and it parallels with essentialism, is that we in life, we tend to overinvest in so many things, and there's only so much of us to go on. There's only so many things that we can truly care deeply about, right? And we have to pick and choose, where do we care the deepest? Where do we focus our efforts the most, right? How do you be intentional and deliberate in the areas that are going to have the biggest impact, and just learn not to care about all of the other stuff, all of the other noise, right? All the failures, all the critics, all that kind of stuff that happens in life, and just not care about it, not let it eat at you. So very crass book. That's my disclaimer. If you don't like weird analogies and things like, Disappointment Panda, who's a great superhero, don't go read it. But if you really are like, hey, I can get past all of that stuff and I want to take away the essential message of the book, it's a good one. And all those listen well. I'm an Audible guy. I very rarely will I actually buy the hardcover book. If it's got graphs and I need to underline stuff, I'll have it. But if it's something where it's just a mindset message, I'll most likely just listen to it on Audible. But those are a couple of my favorite books to recommend.
Amazing. Dan Mori, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for all of these amazing nuggets and value that you brought today. And thank you for everyone for being here today and showing up. This has been recorded. I'll make sure I'll post it in the membership site. Dan, I'll send you a copy of it as well. And Happy New Year to everybody. Let's have a fantastic 2023. What do you say?
I love it. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to email me. And if you ever want me back on to join a chat like this, Russ, open invitation, man. You know me. I love talking shop. You're my guy. Anything I can do to help you on your journey and help your people on their journey, I'm in. Just let me know.
Absolutely, Dan. I'll have you back every week if you'll be there. Trust me. So I'll take you up on that for sure. Yeah. Congratulations on your news today. It's spectacular.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then listen, everybody, Happy New Year's. Go crush 2023. And we'll catch up on the flip side.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.